All right, folks. This is Matt Hammond, IPO Warriors. Welcome to the show. This is the first live stream that I am doing as part of the premium channel, so we're going to have fewer people here. That's great, actually. I think that the setups that we're playing will benefit from us having fewer people on them. That's certainly part of the intention of going into a premium model, is to feel a little bit more freed up to promote to the group the plays that I'm seeing, especially these low float ones. And actually, sorry, I need to update something here. Ali is not joining us today. So that's that. That was residual from last week. So I'm going to jump into this. I think some people will. There are no special guests. It's just me. You guys are the special guests today. Please feel free to chat your questions, chat your comments. I will try to answer what I can. And the blah, blah, blah from the beginning. Excellent. What we're going to do is we're going to review the IPOs from last week that ran. We're going to talk about the IPOs on the calendar for this week. And we are going to look at some of the LPX and other plays that are that we're watching. So I'm gonna record through it, even though we only have 3 people here. Other people will likely join this later, but the idea is each week to hold this at noon. I may adjust that once I get a chance to send out a survey to the group to gauge what would be the best platform for people, what might be the best time for people. But also I do kind of need some time during the day on Monday to prepare for this. I'm up ahead of you guys, so I have the day to look at things. It's also nice to kind of see what's been moving from Friday's IPOs, and that adds to what we're going to be talking about in the show. So no reason to introduce anything else here. I'm going to jump into things, and we will look first at what happened last week. Last week, we had, I think, 8 IPOs on the calendar at the beginning of the week, and 3 of them went live. All of them had stealth written on them. Not all of them performed exactly how we'd expect them to do. But in this market, we're not seeing just the run-of-the-mill kind of low-float IPOs even going live. We may get to a point where those go live, but just the typical offerings by Maxim, Think Equity, those aren't really making it to the calendar. EF Hutton even. What we are seeing are the stealth IPOs. Those are going live. So only the stealth survive. I kind of like that. It does mean that when we see something go live, I've already got my kind of eyebrow cocked and thinking, hey, what's going on here? It's probably not something too straightforward, and that's where we see the most volatility. I'll share some of the things that I was watching for. Did pretty well last week. We're also going to start kind of getting into the mindset that we're going to be able to maybe get some allocations on some of these. So when I talk about the setups here, I know I've always talked about this trade and the IPO trade as though we're just playing the retail once it starts trading. Well, now we've had even some of the stealth IPOs get offered on Wearable. There are, more accessible ways, I believe, to get access to some of these deals through brokers and underwriters, which I'm going to start trying to help people understand how that's done. And we're also getting people in the channel who are able to access these, these allocations. So they're interested in knowing what's going to happen on the pop, so they can request allocations going into the debut. Now, Nano Labs, this one kind of surprised me because it really looked like a stealth IPO. I mean, from the underwriter being AMTD to where it was priced at was a little bit higher. I definitely learned something about this and about the way that the ADT, the American Depository Shares, work. Just because they represent 2 shares doesn't mean that there's going to be 2 shares trading once they debut. Whatever the ADS is, that's how many shares we're trading here. Allocations are for US account holders only. Some of them yes, some of them no. But I think you're maybe specifically responding to NA. Yeah, allocations for Wearable. Maybe that's what you're talking about, because other people are getting allocations internationally, and I know some of these stealth IPOs are giving big pieces of their allocations to Chinese investors, and certainly there are a lot of Chinese investors on Wearable. Are you suggesting, Greg Witt, are you suggesting that those allocations are not available to Chinese or European through Wearable? Please clarify that. Appreciate the feedback here. So what I saw with NA was it priced at 13. It was strange because in the pre-debut indication, we saw them pair up, close enough to where they could have gone live at about 960, 950, 940. And usually we see low float IPOs price for about 10 minutes. They have to price for about 10 minutes, and then they go live as soon as they can, really. This one did not. This one took something like an hour and a half or 2 hours. It got to the point where I think it was at about noon. So it got to the point where I had to, I liked it. I liked the setup. I wanted to get in on it. Once it showed 750, it opened, I think it's 780 or 750 something. I liked it. I wanted to get in on it. I thought, geez, this is way too low for a, super low float IPO. And simply got called. My daughter was sick, had to go pick her up at school. Realized that I wasn't going to be able to actively manage it. I don't want to get into these trades unless I can actively manage them. And as much as I wanted to stay in it, I had to let it go. It opened up at 760, I think it was, not 780. Ripped up into a halt, insta-halted. I think if you're watching this, if you played this live, you're thinking, okay, well, $10 is certainly one area where you could safely get out. I do like to go for 2 legs up. This was the first leg to about 10.50. The second leg, I would have thought of, reaching 13. That might be a little bit greedy because everyone who's stuck at 13 is starting to think where they might cut their losses. So if you got out at 12, 12.20, 12.40, that would be a really great win. Not talking about a lot of time. You are talking about a nice profit. Not any brokers in Canada, at least, I see. Thanks for that input. I think that you might look at whether you can get around that SSN number with a tax ID number. If that might allow you to set things up. I know that there's a lot of places where a social security number is asked for if you get a tax ID number from the U.S. government, that you can sign up for things there that way. But that's a process, or it's, what is it, ETIN? But I'm not sure. Something to look into. In terms of Wearable allocations, you're not getting big allocations. I think you're usually, you don't want a big allocation on the ones that they'll give you a full allocation, and the ones that end up being really good plays. For example, that brings us to the next one. I put in an allocation request for $500 on ILAG. That would have given me 125 shares. They gave me like 19 shares. So you're not going to get a big allocation when it's a good one. This one opened up at $22. It priced at $4. Sure, I'll take the $200 or whatever I got off the selling right away. But the point is that I look at these stealth IPOs, and for me, when they price at $4 or $5, if they open above about 16, 17, I don't want to play them. This opened up at 22. The other thing I'm looking at on these is how much volume is in that opening print. 100,000 shares isn't too bad. That's generally kind of the line where I start thinking, there's more being traded here than I want to see. I like to see 30,000, 40,000. That's gravy. We'll take a look at the next one, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But this one just priced high enough to me where it's like I didn't buy anything more. I just took my allocation, sold it right on the debut, and said, all right, thanks for that. The next thing that people are always asking me is, do you short these? There are apparently locates on these. There are market makers that are able to short these. So don't go thinking that just because it's an IPO that it can't be shorted. One of the things I'm really looking for, especially with these stealth IPOs, is how many shares are getting traded on the first day, in the first couple hours. Because a lot of times we'll see these low float IPOs, especially the ones that have the kind of chopsticks involved. The volume is just super small on day one. We're talking like couple 100,000 shares out of a 5 million share float. That's really small for an IPO. It's not unusual for IPOs to trade their float on day one. So on this one, we saw a float that was 5 million shares, and within 2 hours, by about this point, we had already hit 4 million shares, over 4 million shares. That tells me that, hey, this is not being constrained. This is not insiders constraining the float. This isn't some escrow where a bunch of shares got allocated to the Chinese side, or other foreign group that's going to take 2 days before they're able to liquidate their position, or they're not going to be able to sell it till the second day. So if you were looking at this and you're willing to take that risk of going short on it, what I look back testing on it, I see that we hit like about 4 million shares right about here, and that's where it dropped off. There was no more manipulation. Everybody ran for the exits, fell off there. Last one I want to look at is AMTD. AMTD, we looked at this one as a kind of potential stealth simply because this company, AMTD, this is one of the subsidiaries of the parent company that also is the underwriter for this one. They have been involved with a lot of Chinese IPOs. They have done others that had volatility that we tend to associate with stealth setups. And when I heard from one of my sources here that we had an IPO that had priced at 780, debuted at 13, that says to me, if I'm already sort of suspicious of a stealth setup, and then I see that, I'm bullish. I think, okay, what's the last piece I'm looking for? Low volume. It was like 15,000 shares. I was hearing 12,000 shares. I think the opening print was just 12,000 shares, but 15,000 shares on the opening minute, or in the opening, it instantly halted. It opened at 13, instantly halted to 1480. A riskier play could have been to hold a little bit longer. I took my profits around 15, 1450, and then 1550. I was just happy it's Friday afternoon, take some profits, get out, go have a nice weekend. Now, if you did hold, let's take a look at what it did. HKD on the 1 minute. Today it went to 28. Volume still pretty low. This was originally stated as a 16 million share float. Looks like there's only 3.35 shares trading. Total shares out says 3.35. So somewhere the numbers are a little bit different than was originally advertised and published. So I think that there is actually 16 million shares. I heard they were in escrow. That might take another day. This almost certainly comes down in the near future to below, to the single digits again. Does it fly higher before that? I don't know. If you, got short yesterday and held it overnight, you're not feeling too pretty about it right now. But again, we saw very light volume on day one. It was incredibly choppy. And what was day one? Was just 300,000 shares. So that's not a lot. That's, to me, the play is still going to be volatile. There could be upside. Eventually there's going to be downside. I like the debut enough to take, a small but a few hundred shares, 400 shares I took on the open. Nice little win going into the weekend. Pretty low stress play. Take your profits, move on to the next one. NA took 2 hours and 1 minute. Yeah, and that's a great point. NASCAR, thanks for joining us here. ILAG took 11 minutes. That's what we expect from most of these low float stealth IPOs. In fact, most of the low float IPOs we think of being, they have to do it for 10 minutes. That's like a rule. After 10 minutes, there's not that many shares. How long does it take to pair them up? NA, something must have gone wrong. I've heard different stories, different accounts on it. But that was odd to have what was it? And it was 1.77 million shares. So for that to take 2 hours to go live after quoting, and they didn't capitalize on the opportunity to go live at 960 with more shares paired up than they actually ended up going live with. Something definitely was a little weird on that one. So always things to learn from. They do get it wrong sometimes. They screw up the tickers. The platforms will screw up the tickers. Things aren't tradable all the time. Webull messes them up. E-Trade has messed them up. You're in a world playing IPOs where things are fresh, and when things are fresh, they haven't been kind of truly tested, and there are mistakes on all sides. I try not to be the one make the mistakes. It's going to happen sometimes. But those are the three really good examples of stealth IPOs in different forms and shapes. And certainly going forward, that's what we're going to be looking for, because the rest of the IPOs just aren't going live yet. And until I think the market stabilizes a little bit more, retail feels a little bit more bullish. Institutional money clearly is just sitting on their hands. And the only ones that are coming to market are the ones where it seems like they've got something up their sleeve. So let's take a look at what's on the calendar for this week. Got some familiar faces here. Some of these have been getting a lot of questions, and it'd be interesting to go in and see what you guys think about these. We've got Virax Biolabs again. We got bioAffinity Group again, Wearable Devices again, and two that may or may not be on the calendar for this week. I just picked up in a few places on these, so I want to cover them just in case they are. Jianzhi Education Tech. Don't think you need me to explain too much, but I'm excited about that one. Beamr Imaging, also just hearing kind of whispers that they might be coming to market this week. I don't think they'll actually get on the calendar, but we'll rather cover it and miss it than miss it. So let's jump in. VRAX, if you've been watching the show for the last couple of weeks, you've heard me talking about this a few times. It's a platform for virus testing, with obvious applications towards COVID. They've rescheduled it for at least 2 weeks now. Revenue growth up 23% for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2021. If you're a virus testing platform and your revenue growth is only up 23% in the year that had more viral testing requirements than, any time in recent history, that's, not incredibly impressive. Gross profit down 500% for 12 months. Well, how you lost that much profit or reduced that much profit, unless I guess in the first 12 months of 2020, I guess you're doing pretty well, and now you're unable to match that time. Negative cash flow, negative net income, negative operating profit. So pretty much just a garbage company, and not hearing a lot of positive feedback from people who are closer to the underwriter desk on this one, which is a little bit surprising. Is it a stealth IPO setup? On the surface, when you see Boasted Securities, a company that's, foreign listed, it's a Cayman Islands company, offices in the UK, operations in Hong Kong and Singapore, 1.35 million shares with no warrants. I mean, you got to think this is a stealth IPO, right? I'm just not hearing much from the inside that, that there's any special, block of shares being saved for a Chinese group. I'm not hearing anything about any difficulty in getting shares. It's certainly been available on Webull for quite a while now. I think you can still sign up right now and put in an allocation request. This one is for the for July. I'll put it in here, 21st, and things just aren't looking really great on this one. But I did put an allocation request for $100, the minimum on it's the minimum for Webull. And if I get a full allocation, that'll be kind of the final confirmation for me. If I get 2 or 3 shares, somehow they just, all of a sudden sneak it into a stealth mode, which is completely possible. But if they, if the allocation is small, then maybe I go, okay, well, maybe I got this wrong. And then I can watch the, the pre-debut indication. That'll be something I cover live in the premium Discord group. I don't think I'll be able to live trade it tomorrow or on Thursday. We'll see. Maybe I'll try to do that one live. It shouldn't take too long. So again, I'll be looking for low volume and a high debut premium and a low allocation. If I get all three of those, that's the trifecta I'm looking for. Maybe I play it anyway as a stealth IPO. If I get a full allocation, if I see a big volume, if the debut premium is not is not impressive. Even if the debut premium is impressive and the other two are not what I'm looking for, I'll probably step off of it. It's just not something that I'm hearing much positive information about. So we will continue on from this one. The next one is bioAffinity Group. bioAffinity Group has been rescheduled a bunch of times. This is a diagnostic company focusing on early stage lung cancer and other diseases. It's been rescheduled, I think, 3 or 4 times. It's got warrants. It's Wallach Beth Capital. I couldn't find much information on other IPOs they've done. Not a typical stealth IPO runner, not one that's brought others to market that I can gauge any pattern in terms of their associations. No revenue growth, no gross profits, negative cash flow, obviously. To me, this has biotech bust written all over it. It does have only 1.5 million shares warrants. So, not the kind of play that tends to do very well. Maybe day 2 runs. They've, if you're up at 4 a.m. Eastern time and can get out if you get a little pop there. Maybe an underwriter over allotment play, but otherwise I think it's kind of not that interesting to me, and more downside risk likely than upside risk, than upside gain potential. Wearable devices. This is one I've also covered a bunch of times. We're still kind of just seeing a lot of things getting rotated to next week perpetually. So Wearable Devices, an Israeli tech company. They've got this really cool device. It's a wristband device that has all these sensors along the bottom of your wrist, and based on kind of how you move your fingers, it detects this kind of like your nerve activity in your wrist, and your motion of your hands and everything, and it translates that into feedback into a computer device or a wireless device. So it's basically an interface mechanism that you can wear on your wrist. So you can do things like point to something, and that tells the app something, or give it a thumbs up, and I guess you could like something. But they're building it as having metaverse applications and virtual reality applications. So that is something that's very, I think if they had done this last November when Facebook changed their name to Meta and Roblox ran and everything related to VR and metaverse ran, that would have been a great time for them to IPO. Right now, all those stocks are down. People are sort of, I think, questioning whether they even want to live in a metaverse. And, it's just not going to, I doubt that it's going to run on hype. We just haven't seen any IPOs run on hype right now. And it's been available on Wearable for weeks, still hasn't sold out. And to me, this is interesting for down the road for like a lockup period expiration. Because we know that there's going to be, they're raising money to develop their Apple Watch product. Whenever that Apple Watch product comes to, gets kind of officially announced or launched, that will be a strong catalyst for them. How low will it drop before that happens? I'm not sure. 3.6 million shares is not ultra tiny. It's just small. By this year's standards. The revenue and growth profits, those numbers are interesting. I just don't think anybody cares that much about those. Aegis Capital does seem to be, one of those underwriters that gets involved with stocks that later go on runs in the 90-day or 100-day, 80-day LPX. So I like this one for a longer, it's be on my watch list. And when it goes down to say $1.20 or $1.40 or something like that, maybe build a little position, but more likely I'll just wait and watch for it to post a headline and then try to jump on it early. That's kind of been almost better for me than accumulating, waiting and watching and hoping for a run. I think watching the screeners in the mornings when these do pop and you recognize the name and recognize it for what it is, as a low float IPO running into its LPX. When you see that, and it's up 15 or 20%, that's when you check the headline real quick. That's kind of like been a great way to capitalize on these runs without tying up your capital, sitting around waiting for them, and having to manage it all that time. So really depends on your trading style, your ability to commit that kind of time. For me, I just have so much stuff going on that on days when I'm actively trading, I want to be in it. If I'm not, I don't want to be in it. It's it's easier. I sleep better at night, and when I have fewer positions open, and I can grab them when they run in the morning. I'm up early, and I will be kind of chatting what I see, throwing out those headlines, dropping those tickers, those alerts in the Discord chat. That will be in the common chat. The premium chat will be reserved for the days that we're live trading the IPOs, particularly going into the debut and into the open, and for kind of any preview, any information talking about upcoming IPOs, anything that's becoming available on a Wearable, I'll post that to the premium. But I do want to keep the kind of the free members engaged with daily trading, talking about recent IPOs. I think it brings more eyeballs, more ideas, more engagement on the day-to-day stuff, and reserve the the real value for what IPO Warriors I think delivers to most of the premium members in the premium chat group. So the next one, this is one that I am definitely excited about. JZ, this is Jianzhi Education Tech. It just has kind of stealth IPO all over it. I will try to see if I can find some an allocation elsewhere, but not easy to get these. Network One and Bosted are historically impossible to get much, through a traditional broker. If you have, direct access for yourself, you could probably get some. I know some people are able to, and others are not. Wearable, if this shows up on Wearable, yeah, I'll put in a $500 request. Any more than that, they're not going to give me more than $100 if it's good. If it ends up being garbage, they'll give me all that I ask for, and that's not what I want either. This is a Chinese online corporate education company. We've seen a couple of these. Sounds so much like GSUN. And if you need a reminder on GSUN, that one opened up at like 23 after pricing it like 4 or 5. So that's kind of what I expect out of this one. That it will be a stealth IPO. So they filed their initial F1 in July 2021. A lot of stuff went down in terms of Chinese IPOs. There was a big hiatus. D was a disaster. The Chinese government started regulating private education as a thing. And, we just saw there kind of be a freeze on these. And we've seen a lot of activity in the last few months starting with, must have been somewhere, I can't remember the first one, but JCSE, OST, and we've seen a string of low float stealth IPOs that have given great opportunities to take profits off the debut. For other people who've gotten allocations, they've made a fortune on these. So I like this one for the stealth setup. They're the revenue growth, 17%, gross profit, blah, blah, blah. We don't really care too much about the financials. I almost want them to be bad. I want this company to be not something interesting that the underwriters are bringing to market because they think there's going to be retail interest in it. I want them to take it to market because there's something shady going on in the, behind the scenes. So the fact that they are operating profit and cash flow positive means very little. What I do like is seeing these underwriters, because AMTD and Univest, they tend to bring us kind of, shady stealth setups. So I will be definitely watching this one closely. Again, on the debut, I have not made up my mind that I'm going to trade them just because I believe, or that I'm very confident that it's a stealth IPO, because a lot of times we'll see these debut at a price that's just too much downside risk and not enough upside potential. If I see these, and recently they've been debuting them at around 20, 22, 25, at that price, there could be upside. It's just, 22 to 29. It's a nice little take if you can nail that. But where these go. These go down to $2. So when you know that it's going to $2, trying to catch it on the way up, for a little run is pretty risky, because the greedier you get, the more likely you're going to really get hurt. And once they drop hard, it's hard to carry through, to hold through the bounces. Sometimes they sell it off for just a minute and then rebounds. But how do you protect your downside with a stop loss when that's happening? I need to see a debut kind of definitely below 20, somewhere closer to 15, 16, 17. That's sort of like the sweet spot. Lower than that, okay, that's fine too. I don't want to see it debut right at the IPO price. That's just that to me says it's not a stealth IPO. I want to see the volume under about 70,000 ideally on the opening print. And when I see that and everything lines up, OST, great example, then you can play it pretty well. If you don't get what you like, be willing to walk away. Don't hurt yourself on these. I did it before. It is not fun. Okay, Beamr Imaging. This one I'm not sure is really going live. I've only seen it in one location, but I thought I'd cover it. It's an Israeli software company that does video and audio compression technologies for companies such as Netflix, Vimeo, Citrix, Microsoft, Walmart, and others. So they do have legit customers, which is okay. We don't often see that in kind of low float IPO land. Their revenue and gross profit numbers are kind of surprisingly dismal. 4% is not exactly a growth company, although they do have gross margins of 97%, which means it takes almost nothing for them to sell, an additional unit of their services, which I guess we're really evaluating a company that sounds like interesting. But they are, negative operating profit, negative net income. However, they do have positive cash flow, and the underwriter is Think Equity. I can't get too excited about Think Equity. Too many IPOs have been not really that great from them. They kind of have a mixed bag, and unless I see something, and unless the market is really hot on the topic of what they're bringing to market, I don't think live streaming, I don't think any of that is too exciting right now. What kind of catalysts could they bring down the road at, say, 60, 90 LPX or 180 LPX? Well, they could bring in like a contract with, or some kind of arrangement with, say TikTok or something like that. YouTube doesn't see, maybe I'm being too optimistic there for them. But that is the kind of catalyst where if this drops and the share and the float is still low, they could run this. So again, put these on watch for lockup, LPX plays, lockup expiration plays if you don't like the debut. And that's kind of where I am with those. So those are the IPOs that we're looking at for this week. My guess is that I actually don't think we'll see any of those come live this week. Maybe it's finally time for WLDS or BIAF. I think VRAX will actually go live this week. I think if they can fill that book, then they'll come live. JZ might be next week. I'll get some more info on that before I send out the newsletter. The newsletter should go out probably late tonight. I'm just going to send it out now. I don't need to time it. It's only the premium newsletter is only going out to the premium subscribers, who are probably mostly the people in this watching this video right now. For those of you who maybe pick this up and watch this later, IPOwarriors.com does send out a newsletter each week covering the upcoming IPOs, breakdowns, trading strategies, insights, do research and commentary on each IPO. At the end of the week, I do a recap of what ran, what did and didn't work, from the week before, and up until today, all of that was available for free. We got a lot of people joining. We have over 1,000 subscribers to the newsletter, and I was getting a lot of feedback that the plays were maybe getting played out because I had too many people trading on this information. I also needed to justify spending the 5-10 hours a week that I spend on IPO Warriors, and I was encouraged by quite a few people to take this to a premium model where the real value that I got, kind of that people were telling me they were getting from the service was the premium newsletter and the sort of live trading these IPOs. So decided to take that and say, all right, well, this stuff will be for premium members. You can sign up for the premium membership, go to the website, click the upper right hand corner. The coupons for the pre-launch expire today. There will be other promotions going forward. I don't expect to charge to give discounts further than what I already gave in the pre-launch, but there will be discounts at certain times in the future. If you've been a member for a long time of the Reddit group or following me on Twitter, engaging with me, and you missed the pre-launch, send me a message. We'll work something out. Want to get people into this, especially if you've been supporting me for a while. If you've been a part of the community, going back, it's been almost 2 years now since we first really got this going. So if you have been a part of this, please, and you want to get in on the premium membership, but you missed the pre-debut launch, the pre-launch discounts, send me a message, send me an email, tweet me, get a hold of me, and I'll work something out with you. Otherwise, there will still be a free newsletter going out with just very minimal information. You can get the free trading guide by signing up for the newsletter, where I talk about IPO trading strategies. I'm going to update that pretty soon to have a section on LPX plays, and like to get people involved, but need to save the real value for the premium members. So, having said that, I would like to look at what were some of the recent low float IPO runners from the last week or so. That's because there are more trades, in following IPOs than just the initial debut. One of the things that has been consistently delivering pretty nice wins is when these fall from their debut price, which they almost all do. They all drop down to $1 or $2 from their opening $5-6, and once that consolidation occurs, we have a bunch of warrants that are out there, a bunch of locked up shares that the insiders are stuck in, and guess what? They want to run these. They want to get that share price up so they can capitalize in on the position that they earned as early investors, as founding members, as underwriters. And to do that, they need to come up with catalysts to pop these stocks. And there's a couple of ways that happens. Two of the setups that we've consistently seen, one more frequently, but others going forward, is that when the IPO process is closed, when the underwriters have an over allotment period, they can choose to buy more shares. So we've seen a few of these recently, and last week gave us two good examples. We hadn't reached the lockup expiration, but we did close the public offering, and that resulted in the share price running. So I want to take a look at those and just show you kind of what that looks like here. The first one was ILAG. I called out the turnaround on this one in the recap. I said that I wanted to get in at around 220. I actually wrote that recap on Thursday, but didn't send it out till Friday, and it already started running, so I can't really take too much credit for that. But if you're chatting directly with me, I definitely shared that thought with you. And those of you, if any of you are in here, you know who you are. If you had, gotten in at and been patient, waited for that 220, I guess you had to wait till about here, maybe 230 would have been okay, kind of start building. Then they announced I think it was right around here that they announced the closing of the IPO, and look at this run. Boom. Basically from a low of 211 to today up to 238. That was a nice one. I had my eyes on it. Just last week, my whole family had COVID, and that includes the 1-month-old and the 2-year-old. So I was pretty scatterbrained. I was also trying to get everything ready for this launch and just kind of kicking myself. I hate seeing plays that work out as you kind of forecasted and didn't jump in. It's going to happen more often than I'd like to admit. But if you did catch it, take notes, look at it for next time. All right. Harry, nice. People look at the time. Let's see. I'm in the mood for serious guys. Yeah, thanks, Harry. Harry got in on it. Good job, Harry. A few other people I know was chatting with got in on it as well. So glad. Always happy to see people taking profits, whether I'm in the party or not. So the other one that went last week was this was just one of those ones that I was not interested in this IPO at all. And if we go back, we can see it was not a great IPO. They opened this one at 720 and it just dropped. This thing was just a turd. SVRE, this is some kind of like, as I remember, it's an Israeli company that does. Oh yeah, this is some like app that hooks up to your car and won't let you drive it if you've been drinking. So I think okay, cool. Probably good for some companies that want to control their drivers, make sure their drivers aren't drinking on the road. That seems to be what the catalyst was. Ostensibly, they signed. So what they do, they signed pilot agreements with 5 companies. So that was the headline that dropped over here on the 8th. What also happened at the same time, not coincidentally, is they closed the IPO, closed the public offering. So that was what a month, 45-day overwriter or underwriter over allotment. Good for them. They have a new collaboration with Universal Trucks Israel, so they're still trying to push it a little bit. It kind of seems like it's already been, the jump has already been had. So we are seeing this public, closing the public offering. That does seem to be a catalyst right now, especially for these low float IPOs. Something I'll be, talking about a little bit more and trying to help guide people on. I will set up the news alerts, but pretty much as soon as they get announced, they start to run. They run for a little bit, but they don't seem to be too sustained. And eventually these die back off again. So that they run on these over allotment, closing a public offering, it's going to bring in some bag holders for the LPX play. So I want to be kind of going to be aware of that when I see something approaching LPX. Did they run on an over allotment? Was it a little bit delayed? Does that mean there's going to be more bag holders? For sure. Are we going to see resistance in the volume profile? Sure. This isn't one that I really understand what their catalysts are going to be, other than signing contracts with trucking companies, signing contracts with fleet management companies, things like that. If major government were to get involved and make some kind of policy requirement around this, that would be a tremendous catalyst, and that might be worth really taking for a multi-day play. But I do believe that there's an element of how much interest is there in what the company actually does as to whether these runs get sustained or not. So I'm not trying to get in on Saber One at this point. So now I'm going to go to the LPX that are on watch. So lockup plays that are coming up. It certainly seems to me like a lot of people are paying attention to these. To this lockup expiration play, and that means that the sooner that I can kind of see them coming, the better position that I can establish myself in. I also see that there tends to be a little bit of a liquidity event right before the actual pump. So TKLF, this is one that was a stealth IPO back in January. They opened it at 40 and went to, I think, 44 actually, as I remember, but it says 43 here. It dropped off. It finished the day one at like 16. It rebounded a little bit on day 2. It was very choppy, and then it got the rug pulled out from it, and has just been down in the $2 bin for a long time. Down at $1.50. I guess your downside is always unlimited on these. These can all go bankrupt, non-compliant. Revert, then a reverse split. You can get burned pretty hard. Don't want to get in the mindset that these can do you no wrong. These can do you wrong, but TKLF did have a bit of a spike here. I think this was earnings. No, it wasn't earnings. It was just, I don't remember what that was. What was that? That was June 30th. June 30th, we had not a whole lot. Partners, blah, blah, blah. Rally came, no apparent press release, annual shareholders meeting. So this is going to be something in the filings or something in the there will be a reason for that. Other people who are much smarter than I am in terms of tracking these will know. But I think a lot of people are anticipating this one to run on the LPX or shortly after the LPX. And the LPX is the lockup expiration play. There's no rule that says on the day of the LPX they will run it. The LPX is really just when now we have a bunch of shares that can be sold that have been kind of stuck in the, have been unable to sell, and they're sitting there on their hands just grinding their teeth when it was up here at 40, 32, 30, 27. Probably also a little bit anxious to try to get out when it made a little bit of a bounce here to 456. I mean, they're just sitting there going, God, why can't we sell now? Now my shares are just down, 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 and down at $1.10. They're going, we got to do something about this. And other people are going, well, they're going to do something about this. And we're going to start. So we see it start kind of crawling up here, walking up here. And we expect that, I expect them to clear it out a little bit. So if I can get in at, say, 120 or something like a knife down, that would be nice. If I miss it, okay. But do we expect them to drop some kind of, fluffy PR to run this? Yeah, of course we do. We think they're going to try to get up what do these typically go to $3 or $4. So, these are the plays I'll be watching. These are the LPX that are coming up, and now is not a bad time to look at whether it makes sense to try to take a little position and see if you can get sort of, you can say get lucky, or if it works out consistently, I guess you say you have skill. The other one I'm looking at is FGI. FGI is coming up. This was another one of those just low float IPOs that, as expected, it opened at 5, dropped down, closed the public offering, ran. Then I think we've got the 60-day. Yeah, about 60 days later, we got it running up again. 60-day, likely a 60-day LPX here. Then what? Then it dropped off, sold off. Now we're going into the second kind of dip. And if you look at TKLF, you see kind of similar up here, and then it came off. But FGI down at 224. It's up a little bit today. So any of these plays, trade carefully, but buy close enough to the bottom on something that hasn't spiked yet on an LPX play. I find that there's a very good chance that you're going to get a tremendous upside. The downside, it's there. You could lose 50% on this, but you could gain 300%. So, the risk reward, the lower you get in, the better. And where, does this run? Yes, I believe so. So, I believe that takes me to the end of this presentation. I'd like to take a few minutes here and see if you guys have any questions. This is, for the time being, the closest thing we're doing to a conference call at the moment. That may change. It just kind of have to figure out whether how to do a conference call other than to let people ask questions. Letting everybody talk at once isn't gonna be a very productive meeting. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to shoot questions out. If nothing comes in here, we will close this down and try to continue looking at ways to bring more value through IPO warriors. So, any questions? Is there anybody out there? All right, folks. I think I'm going to shut this down. Really appreciate those of you who joined me for signing up for the premium membership, for joining us on the chat. And I will be running out for a little bit here. I'll be back on Discord tonight, be writing up the newsletter and getting that out, and got a few other kind of goodies coming down the pipeline. I don't want to talk about too much yet, but hey, Harry, thanks. But I got some things I'm thinking about adding to the website for the group, but gotta get some time to set those up, and I'll just leave that out there for now. So thanks, you guys. I'm gonna hit the end broadcast button in 3, 2, 1. Adios.